Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dose of Pharma. I'm your host, Jenny, and I'm very pleased to be joined by our guest today, Isabella Bombardieri, who graduated from Monash University, the Pharmaceutical Science faculty, and with a major in formulation science. So we'll be talking to her about her studies, her various postgraduate experiences, and her time at Aesop as an ingredient coordinator. So without further ado, I'll just pass it on to Isabella herself to tell us a bit about who she is.
Cool. Well, hello everyone, and I'm really happy to be here. It's an honor to be invited to talk on Dose of Pharma, knowing that it has been created by students from where I studied. As you've said, really, Jenny, I studied at Monash. I did the pharmaceutical science course and decided to major in formulation science. I also did an honours year as part of my course. And then, I decided to go into industry, and I'm currently at Aesop, which is in the cosmetics industry. And my role specifically is ingredient coordinator. So I handle a lot of the ingredient documentation, data, handling communication with suppliers and internal stakeholders. So yeah,
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much. So after your introduction, we want to start a bit about start on your undergraduate studies. So we'll talk a bit about that. Could you tell us about kind of your educational background in Monash and what drew you to your major in formulation science?
Yeah, of course. So really throughout high school, I knew that I was really interested in science. I did chemistry, physics, biology, all of the things. And it was kind of hard for me to decide, at the end of high school, like what did I actually want to pursue? Like what did I have most interest in? And I think I had decided that like chemistry was probably something that I enjoyed most. And just through going to like uni open days, reading all the course guides and whatnot, I thought, like pharma sounds pretty interesting. I've always had this interest in like the medical field, and obviously knowing that I liked chemistry, it felt kind of like a really good mix between those two interests. So that's kind of what led me to the course itself. In terms of my decision to go down like the formulation path, that again was something that I wasn't sure about right from the start. I'm not sure if all the same streams exist now. I know the course has changed a little bit, but there were two other majors. One of them was called drug discovery biology, and the other was like organic chemistry.
Oh, cool.
And I personally was really interested in the biology one, but at the point where we had to decide our stream, it was kind of like halfway through your course, and I had these thoughts in my mind, like, do I really want to do like academic research, or do I want to be able to go into industry? I thought, maybe I'll try and keep my options open. So because I was in the honours stream of the course, I knew I was going to have to do my placement in MIPS research.
Okay, yes.
So already I knew I was definitely going to have like academic research experience through the course. And I thought, well, doing formulation science would allow me to also do an industry project at some point. So I think having that would allow me to like try out both those options and go from there really for what I wanted to do afterwards.
Right, that's good to hear about. A lot of considerations obviously going through your mind before you finally decided. I'm sure a lot of us have this struggle right now of doing the course, but not actually too sure where we want to venture out in the future.
Exactly, yeah.
And so it's good to know that there are always pathways and we can always make decisions once we find out a bit more.
Yes.
So no worries. So just moving on from kind of your uni life and talking a little bit about the entry into the workforce, could you just tell us a bit more about your earlier career experiences and how you think they shaped you and your career trajectory as well?
Yeah, so I started working just at my local supermarket during high school, and I ended up working there all throughout my studies. So I ended up being a bit more than 7 years. And even though it was just, my part-time job, it wasn't really related to my studies. I think it was still really valuable in terms of the skills that I was able to develop from those roles. So, for example, I would be dealing with customers, dealing with teammates. I had a leadership role as well. So it was partly decision making, and all these things that I think I could definitely translate into any kind of role, whether it's, helping me get through uni or in your professional life after that. So I think any kind of work experience is very valuable.
Yeah, you're totally right, Isabella. I think we're more and more starting to realize that there are things beyond the classroom that we can experience and won't be able to experience in uni or just by learning about them.
Exactly, yeah.
So definitely getting those early career opportunities is very important for us to think about as well. So Isabella, after you kind of finished your pharmaceutical science degree, how was it like transitioning to full-time work and to a job that's more relevant to the degree, and how did you find that transition period?
Of course, leaving your studies and trying to move into like a more professional focused career it's pretty daunting. It's definitely something that there's a lot of questions going through your mind about, the directions to take and whether you're going to enjoy what you end up deciding and all these things going through your mind. For me personally, I did have a good experience transitioning from that student life to professional life. I did allow myself to take a few months break after finishing my studies, but that was probably more because when I finished, it was 2020 and COVID had kind of taken over the world already. And so, it was a really interesting work environment just across the board. So that also presented some challenges in terms of being able to navigate like a different environment to what we might expect.
I'll follow up on that kind of line of thought as you talk about transitioning into full-time work. What do you think were some challenges that you found was a bit difficult for you as you adjusted to kind of a new workplace? And how do you think these challenges differ from those we face in uni?
I think being in industry and in a corporate kind of environment, it's definitely very fast-paced and quite dynamic as well. So things are changing all the time, without warning. I would say compared to uni life or, that more academic environment, things are probably more structured and move at a slower pace. So that's definitely something that I really noticed. And in terms of how I managed to kind of get used to that, I would say I definitely lent on my team and my leaders around me. So seeking the guidance and being allowed to have a good transition period into the role. So a real focus on like learning and not just trying to hit the ground running. So it's definitely having that open kind of mindset to adapt to a new experience and kind of shift on your feet when things pop up. So
for sure. Very valuable experiences and good insight, Isabella. Thank you. I think, it is very important for uni students to keep in mind that the workforce will be completely different to what we're used to.
Exactly.
But also, a good time to just keep in mind that we're still learning and that we'll be learning for the rest of our lives. So just taking it easy as well is important.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, good. So now we want to dive a little bit deeper into your current position at Aesop. So we'll start off with, how did you kind of land this role from entering the company as a newbie?
So it was quite a funny experience, I think. I did finish my honours, I did my honours studies at MMIC, so the Medicines Manufacturing Innovation Centre, which was like a collaboration between Monash and industry. And I really had a great time there. I had a really good relationship with my supervisor, Paul, and got along well with the team. And initially, the intention was to actually stay on there and continue working in that team. But due to like COVID and all these other things, that there actually wasn't an opportunity for me to stay there at that time that I did finish my studies. And so that kind of pushed me to think, okay, I will try and venture out into the industry, see what other roles and opportunities I can get. And so, yeah, I started applying for whatever sounded interesting to me. And it wasn't necessarily just lab work or things that were strictly related to the course. It was just anything that kind of sounded interesting. So eventually I got through a few interview rounds for this Aesop role. And I got into the last round of interviews, and it was with Sammy, who is Aesop's R&D director. And the first thing he did when he walked into the interview room was, "Hey, I remember you." And that is because I did like a mock interview with him as part of one of the employability week activities.
Yep.
So that was quite funny because and quite terrifying, honestly, because I do recall that our first interview or our first interaction of me as a student and him offering this mock interview, I don't think it went that well. So for him to remember that, it was probably a little bit scary going into that interview. But I guess, he's now my boss, so it went all right. Yeah. At the same time, I had a lot of friends working in the clinical space, and they were able to get me some opportunities in that industry too. So from, not being able to go into continued work at MMIC, which is initially what I wanted, by the time I had done all these interviews and whatnot, I ended up having 3 offers in the same week. Yeah. And then I was again faced with another decision of, well, what do I actually want to do here? Do I want to go back into like the Monash environment? Do I want to go into cosmetics, which is Aesop, or do I want to go into the clinical research space? So that again was, I guess a decision point in my career so far. Yeah. And in terms of what led me to choose Aesop, aside from knowing about the company itself, which I really resonate with, I definitely lent on Paul, my honours supervisor, as a mentor. And he really led me to kind of follow my instinct and don't feel like I need to use or I need to pursue something that is directly related to my studies. And so I went a little more in the deep end and decided to go into the cosmetic space. So yeah, the rest is history, really.
Amazing. Such an interesting story about what a small world it is. And how interactions in uni might actually come back to us in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's good to, obviously, you talked about your mentor, Paul, as well. People who support you and actually keep encouraging us is very, very important because they have all the experiences that we can learn from as well.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Just diving a little bit more into your role, we're all kind of curious what kind of things you do and what a typical day of work would look like for you.
Yeah. And this is your typical work day, I think, is something that as a student you find like it's so interesting, like you really want to know. And I think it's one of those things that it's kind of hard to explain. For me personally, it's definitely a mix of my usual responsibilities for my specific role and my place in the business. But then also I try to mix it up with project work. So things that aren't just your standard like regular reports or regular activities, and that's what kind of keeps it exciting. And I think that's where you get a lot of growth as well. So I can I'm also mostly self-led in terms of like how I structure my day, which is really great for me. Like that works well. So some of those days where I think, I don't really have the capacity to communicate very much today, I'll get into the more data activities. Spend my day on Excel, which love that sometimes. But other days I'll be in meetings, I'll be talking to the formulators, I'll be in conversations with ingredient suppliers, and even other internal stakeholders in other teams to communicate decisions surrounding ingredients. There's a lot that goes under the framework of ingredient work. So it's from being able to select the right material to whether the function is what we need it for, and then at the manufacturing stage, if it's appropriate for the equipment that we have available, and then even more considerations in terms of like regulatory wise. So yeah, there's a lot of I guess stages of product life that I get to touch in my job. So I think that keeps it really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. It's not just one thing all the time. That would definitely be very boring, but it's also good. You get that flexibility to kind of structure your work day or your work week, depending on what energy level you're feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, sounds pretty nice. Yes. So what are kind of some rewards and challenges that you've come across at work during this time, and what are your strategies for kind of overcoming the challenges?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think for me personally, it was probably being able to grow in confidence to make a decision and accept accountability for that. So I started as a more assistant level, which is like entry level role. You're not really expected to make high level decisions, but as you progress over time, and as I got more confident in my knowledge of whether it was like regulatory or like a chemical understanding of the ingredients we use, I think I also grew this belief in myself, or trust, I guess, to know that, okay, I'm confident in what I know, and I do believe in my decision. So I think that is something that comes both with a bit of time. So I've been at Aesop for just over 3 years now, I believe. So time, I guess, but also having managers and a team that give you the opportunity to kind of challenge yourself, or they'll encourage you to make a decision and really offer you questions like, like, what do you think we should do at this point? If you're faced with, all these options, should we stop using this ingredient? Or is there a better option? Like asking, like having a more senior members give you the floor to put in your opinion, I think is something that was really helpful to me, and I'm lucky that I have that kind of framework. Yeah, so I think that, and then maybe one more thing is being able to connect with colleagues and just other people outside of my immediate team. I know it sounds like I do talk a lot, but I'm not the most adventurous person in a social situation. So I think trying to get involved in opportunities like outside of your normal day-to-day work helps you connect with people from other teams, doing any like kind of like professional development opportunities and even volunteering. We are encouraged to do quite a bit of volunteering at work, and you often do that with people who aren't in your team. So yeah, all these other little activities that help you build connections that, you know, eventually you might end up working with this person as well on the same project. So yeah, I think not being scared to get involved in different activities.
Yeah. You made a very, very good point about having to grow in confidence as a person in full-time work and in a new environment as well. I think it's something that students tend to not think about until they're suddenly thrust into the workforce, and then they have to be the decision makers and they have to be responsible for everything that they do instead of having people to rely on.
Exactly right.
It's good to start thinking about how we can do that from, I guess, student life and from our studies, and how to seek people for support as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure. No worries. So what kind of skills and techniques, talking about that, from kind of your university studies or earlier careers, did you kind of use on a regular basis at your work, or did you find most useful during your job?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I think there's like two main types of skills really that have benefited me in my role so far. And first of all, it's the soft skills. So, you know, we hear this a lot now.
Yes.
But as I mentioned earlier, like my part-time work throughout my studies was really where I had like leadership experience. It's where I developed communication skills, and even through like working in groups at uni. And I think I'm actually surprised with how much I do use from, it's really funny. Yeah. There was a project I was working on a little while ago to do with, there was like a regulation on like volatile chemicals and vapor pressure things that allowed an exemption. So I was actually using like thermodynamics and all this stuff. I was like, oh, I really didn't expect to need to use that at any point.
Yeah.
But I think, you'll be surprised how much you think that you don't know that well after you finish. Like you might come out of it and be like, what have I actually retained? But you once you have the right project or task to apply your knowledge, you'll be surprised how much just comes up, and you're like, oh wait, all of a sudden that makes a lot more sense than it did when I was at uni. So even things like as part of my honors, I did a bit of organic chemistry because I was working with kind of like botanical extracts. So that's helped my understanding a lot of how some of the ingredients that we select at Aesop are developed and what goes into making those, even down to like HPLC and analytical chemistry. So I don't actually use those machinery anymore. Like I'm not physically doing the analysis, but I need to get the reports of them. I need to review the results, and I can understand, you know, what this means. If there's something that pops up that doesn't seem right, well, maybe I'll be like, you know, maybe the polarity wasn't what we needed. So I have this general understanding that I think, it's definitely useful in what I do. Like most days. So
that's lovely. I think a lot of science students kind of just go through uni a bit confused and a bit like wondering whether or not this is actually applicable to real life. Many find that it isn't, but it is very surprising sometimes when you suddenly get a piece of information and you can use your knowledge, and I think that's very rewarding as well.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yes. So just kind of ending our episode off by taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture, we'd love to kind of seek some of your advice and insights as well. I'll just start off with a broader question. So what do you think are some kind of emerging trends in the industry that you've seen, or anything new and upcoming that we can be excited for?
Wow, there's a lot that goes on. As I said before, I think industry moves really fast, and in particular the cosmetics industry, like it's things popping up all the time. I would say something that's a really big focus at the moment is definitely like sustainability and those kind of initiatives.
Okay.
And there's obviously a lot that goes into that, but I think something that is definitely really taking off is this idea of upcycling and value adding. So, you know, in a standard manufacturing process, there's of course like waste products or byproducts that, you know, they might not have a recognized function at the moment. So there's a lot of research that goes into how can we use these materials and make them valuable and reduce that burden on the environment. So yeah, something that I definitely see advertised by like ingredient suppliers is, you know, they've come up with a new way to use a certain feedstock. So I think that's really interesting, and it's definitely something that pushes for innovation in the industry as well. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, lots of exciting things, and I think you're right. Sustainability is definitely that kind of big monster looming around over most industries at the moment. So it's really good to start thinking about how we can make a difference, and I guess how to get consumers on board as well with that.
I think actually to continue on with that as well, consumers themselves, I feel, are a lot more informed and educated now. Like there's a lot of information that's quite readily accessible. So especially for like cosmetics, and it's really easy to do your own research as a consumer on like what this ingredient is, you know. So I think as well a big trend is genuine marketing in a way. So it's not like really out there and like fantastical, because the consumers they have this base knowledge now, like or even if they don't, it's really easy for them to go and find out what they're looking for. So yeah, it's definitely considering a changing audience as well. Very interesting.
For sure, yes. Anything can be Googled these days, and it's very interesting how I guess industries have had to adapt to that and to really kind of be very open about what they're about and what they include in their products.
Yeah.
So, definitely a lot of change recently, something to be excited for as well. So looking back kind of on your career so far and on your journey in university as well, let's say what is one biggest takeaway or key lesson that you want to give to students that you think they can focus on while still being in uni?
Yeah, I think I just really like the idea that all experience is valuable experience. Yeah, it doesn't have to be directly related to your career goals or your studies. I think, just exposing yourself really to different situations, different people. Yeah, it's really about acquiring new soft skills and developing those, and just knowing that you will be able to translate that into something that you can use in your career. Yeah, so definitely getting yourself out there.
Yes, very good takeaway. I think all of us need to keep in mind that everything kind of matters, yet not everything is the most important. So just gaining all these experiences, kind of casting the net out there, especially if we're not too sure of what we want to do in the future.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good advice. Thank you so much, Isabella. Thank you for sharing your story with us and sharing about your role and just spending this time with us to talk a little bit about your experiences in your career journey as well. I'm sure many of us already know Aesop as like that store where you walk past and the scent just like attacks you in the best way possible.
Yes.
So it's definitely great getting some insight into how everything works there and what we can look forward to in the future as well. So we wish you all the best in your career journey and really thank you for just having a chat with us today.
Of course. Thank you, Jenny. It's been a really wonderful opportunity. This is great. And I know I'll still be in touch with Monash and
For sure. Excited for your future as well.
Thank you. And yours too.
Thank you.
Dosa Pharma acknowledges the traditional custodians of the various lands throughout Australia on which we connect today and pays respect to elders past, present, and future.